have this great season. You got the C on your chest. Obviously, been there long enough to earn the C, and you had a successful year. And then you guys go out in the first round. The results of that is they feel it's the best decision of the San Jose Sharks for Patrick Marleau not to be captain anymore.
Yeah, I was not. I don't want to get into it, but there's some things said behind closed doors that they had their reasoning behind it, and for me, it wasn't good reasoning, but it happened nonetheless.
You could be totally thinking, what is everybody thinking? What are even my teammates thinking? Like, how did you go about, cultivating that into your best personal season yet?
It was a FU attitude. It was like, oh, screw you. Like, that's not going to, like, I know there's one or two ways that could have went, right? It could have been this way or this way. So I chose to go the other way.
So fuel.
Yeah, I use it as fuel.
That was Patrick Marleau, the all-time games played leader in NHL history. And you are listening to the My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podolin. Just watch me now. Welcome to My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back to the My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podolin. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, and you are here for episode 121. And episode 121 is pretty fantastic because we have an absolute legend of the game. And I do not say that lightly. That's with a capital L, legend. Patrick Marleau is our guest today. And, if you have followed NHL hockey at all in the last, 30 years, 20 years, this guy's name. One, because he holds one of the most distinguished records in all of hockey, which is the most regular season NHL games ever played by a human being. Patrick Marleau owns that at 1,779 games. If you add in his playoff games, which is pretty fantastic because he played on some great teams there in San Jose and had deep playoff runs, the number goes up even more. 195 playoff games to take him to 1,974 career NHL games. I did the math on that just quickly. If he played a game every day, or if you decided to play a game, an NHL game, for every day, back to back to back, you would take you 5.5 years to accomplish that, playing every single day. Patrick Marleau did it over 23 seasons, which is pretty fantastic. Like he not only holds that record, but he also played over 900 consecutive NHL games. What else did this man do? He played in 4 world championships. He won 2 gold medals there, 1 silver with Canada. He won 2 Olympic golds in 2010 and 2014. He was an all-star 6 times. He scored 15 seasons in a row, 20 or more goals, 15 seasons, not in a row, sorry, but 15 seasons out of his 23 years. So an accomplished player, 1,197 points overall, 566 goals, wore a letter on his chest for 16 of his seasons. He was a second overall pick in 1997, but behind Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton also played over 1,700 regular season games in the NHL. So that 1-2 punch is crazy in that draft. Not to mention that they ended up playing together after Joe got traded from Boston. So they spent a lot of time together in San Jose and were a lethal 1-2 punch there. So yeah, to have somebody that surpasses Gordie Howe, whose name is obviously synonymous with hockey, his nickname is Mr. Hockey. So for Patrick, like, to pass Gordie Howe in that mark of the most games ever, and for us to have him on the show here today is pretty special. We talked about right at the beginning. I ended up we have a history only of being in the WHL together. So he was 3 years younger than me. I'm a 76 born, Patrick's a 79 born. So we played, I believe, 2 years against each other. For sure, his rookie year as a 16-year-old. And I remember him coming in, and he had a solid season that year for sure. Let me look it up here, actually. Let's see what he had as a 16-year-old in the WHL. He had a 32 goal season. So yeah, really solid year as a 16-year-old, 74 points in 72 games. The next year he went on, it was his draft year, and he had 125 points that year in 96, 97. So I think that I was out of the league then. Yeah, so I played against him once. So it was obvious, as a 16-year-old to do what he did there and how he did it. His skating always stood out, that he was going to be a player. He had a fantastic draft year and ended up going second overall. And never saw juniors again, never saw the minors. He went straight to the NHL. He was one of the youngest players to ever play in the NHL. He had a late birthday, Patrick did, I think in September or something. So he was 18 years, 16 days old when he played his first NHL game, and never looked back. Never looked back. He accomplished some great things, and yeah, I met him. Sorry, now I digress. But I saw him. My boy was playing in a tournament, my oldest Hudson, just last weekend or 2 weekends ago now, and San Jose was there, and anyways, Patrick was on the bench. So I introduced myself, which I usually don't do, but I thought, what the heck, this is Patrick Marleau, and I probably should shake his hand and say hi. And anyways, and he was gracious as ever, and easy to approach and easy to talk to, and he agreed to share his number with me, and that he'd want to come on the podcast, and so that was how that happened. And yeah, and now my gift to you is this 50 minutes or so that I got to spend with Patrick, and probably, I would assume it's unconventional to most of his interviews. We didn't, I didn't break down the Stanley Cup playoff runs. We didn't talk about the Olympic gold medals that he won. We talked about lessons. We talked about some of his preparation habits. We talked about some of the mindset that it took for him to be able to play 900 games in a row, and what he teaches his sons today when he's behind the bench, and some of the lessons that he wished he would have learned sooner, and approach to coaching styles, and I mean all the stuff that I think Up My Hockey is known for, and probably some of the questions that he didn't have the opportunity to answer too often. And so I was really, really grateful for this interview. It was, tons of gold nuggets in there. If you can't learn something from somebody who played 1,779 NHL games, he's very forthcoming with gifts of gold, the lessons that he learned. Great conversation all the way around. And yeah, kind of a big moment for Up My Hockey, to be honest, to be able to have someone like Patrick come on here and share so much time with us. So I assume that this discussion will get a lot of listens and a lot of downloads. If you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed having it, then please do share it and get it out amongst your networks. Because if you have a hockey player that wants to be better, and if you are a hockey parent that wants to help your child, then this conversation is fantastic. And if you're just a Patrick Marleau fan or a fan of hockey, then I think you're going to see a side of Patrick that maybe you don't get to see too often in conventional interviews and formats as such. So yeah, lots of good stuff here. The other thing I failed to mention so far is that we talked about when the coaching staff decided to remove his C after a President's Cup winning year with an early exit in the playoffs. They took his C away the following season. So we talk about that adversity and what that meant to Patrick and how he forged on. So yeah, lots of really good stuff and stuff that you probably haven't heard before. So I'm just gonna let this one rip. Obviously, Patrick and his pedigree speaks for himself. Although I did have to read his hockey card because it's crazy, like when you actually look at what he has accomplished. So for all of you, please enjoy my conversation with the NHL's all-time games played leader, 1,000-point man himself, a 500-goal man himself, Mr. Patrick Marleau. Here we are. Welcome to the Up My Hockey Podcast, Patrick Marleau.
Thanks for having me.
Hey man, it's great to have you. I really appreciate you coming on. We just, for everyone listening, I bumped into you in Abbotsford. San Jose was was at the Bauer Invitational, and my boy plays on Rink Academy, and I look down the bench and I'm like, geez, that looks like Patrick Marleau. And obviously, Patty, you have a boy on that team, so yeah, I don't even know like if you recognize or even remember the name, but I walked up to Patty and I was like, hey, Jason Padol, we played together in WHL a long time ago. And anyways, you were nice enough to shake my hand, and here we are. So maybe it's a good place to start. Like how before we get into you, how has the other side of your hockey journey been now, dealing as a hockey dad and on the bench?
Yeah, it's a big change. I think being on the other side of the coin now, I guess, with the playing career being all done. So now it's my kids' turn to kind of pursue their dreams and goals, and just trying to support them as best I can, and being on the bench and at practice, trying to help them out. And um, so I don't know if they take the instruction as well as they do from a different coach as they do from dad, because it probably hurts a little bit more, or
Yeah,
meaner coming from a dad. But I try and I try and pull them aside and say, anytime I give you something, it's all I'm only thinking of your well-being, and I want the best for you. So if you're taking it as I'm uh, coming down on you or being negative, then this isn't going to work. So I try to be upfront with them as much as possible, because I mean, I remember my dad telling me things, and I get pissed off. But so I can kind of read their faces when I tell them something, if that hit home or if it pissed them off. So then
yeah.
try and try and smooth it out if they take it the wrong way.
Yeah, communication is such I mean, I think that the as far as coaching and especially at the professional levels, I think that's like been the biggest change really in like the last 20, 30 years is like the level of communication ability. You can know the game like the back of your hand, but you need to be able to talk to the players in a way that the players want to be talked to. I think you're actually a great guy to ask that, because you mean in
Mhm.
your long career, you saw cultural swings, I would assume, and like you went from Daryl Sutter to probably the other end of the under the spectrum there. Like, what did you see that like as
Yeah.
being a difference in today's game?
Oh, for sure. And I think it's slowly evolved to, I think, for the better, and I think it's continuing to evolve that. But yeah, I think you're totally right. The communication thing, like a coach can come in at the end of a game or before a game or anytime, but when he addresses the whole team, and he kind of uses like generalities, like, you guys got to be doing this, you got to be doing that. You could have five guys. Well, he's not talking about me. I got five guys saying, "Oh, I do a good job at that," or and five guys thinking, "Oh, he's talking about me. He's all about me." Like it's a little bit different when you're talking to a group like that. But knowing like how to get the most out of your players is probably one of the more intriguing things, I think, because you're dealing with different personalities, and somebody who needs a kick in the pants might help them out. Somebody who wants a pat on the shoulder and let them know how good they're doing, and that's they respond well to that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's the coaches nowadays. There's a lot that goes in. It's not only just X's and O's. You're dealing with personalities. You're dealing with you know chemistry within the locker room on the ice. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. Do you see that like from whatever and when you came in? I mean, end of the '90s, I think somewhere around there, like to now. Is Have you seen that pendulum shift as far as, because I remember, I mean, when I was
Yeah,
playing, it was definitely a blanket approach, right? Like it would be everyone kind of got the same brush, like with whatever style the coach was,
yeah,
and then it sort of started to shift. I even saw in a little bit of time where you would have more individual meetings. You would have a few more chats here and there where they would want to get to know you maybe a little bit more as a person instead of just what you were offering as a hockey player. Like, did you see that shift yourself?
yeah. Definitely. Like I first came in with Daryl, who really hard nosed and you know wanted everything done a certain way, and then my next coach was Ron Wilson, who was more loose. His approach, he wanted to be having fun, and still playing hard, but he wanted everybody to enjoy the game and have fun. So that was two polar opposites, kind of, and the way they approached the game. But and then Todd McClellan came in, and that's really kind of, I think, might have been with Ron as well. But when you hear the teams talk about our core group of guys, our leadership group, it's having more meetings with the coaches, and like getting for the coaches, I mean, it helps to have players involved, and for players, it helps having the coach involved because you're in it together, as opposed
Right.
like when I first came in, it was almost like a disconnect. Like coaches are here, players are here, and sometimes they're button heads, and he's trying to get the
Yeah.
best out of us, however way he looks at it. But this way you can communicate and get into the details of the game, get into, what's going on with certain players or the chemistry and in the locker room, on the ice. So it can only help with open communication, I think.
Yeah. I should go back to your comment about your own sons, because I always make that joke. You mean, let's call them normal hockey parents, right? Like, also have suggestions to their players, and I get that all the time. And what I do is, well, they never listen to me, and I'm like, don't worry, they don't listen to me either, and like they don't listen to Patrick Marleau either. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think if your dad or mom, like regardless of what type of hockey career you've had or what you've accomplished, when it's your kid, it just sounds and rings a little differently. Like
Yeah.
we got to be
Yeah.
careful. I think that's why it's cool to be able to grow a team, right? I mean, to have someone, I'm sure all the parents there on San Jose are pretty excited to have you on the bench and to have them talking to your kid, because they're probably listening a heck of a lot more than your own son does, I would assume.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you have a favorite style of coach, since we're on that? Like, was to be Patrick Marleau's best coach, how would I handle you?
Yeah, I think what I really enjoyed was when the coaches brought you in and talked to you, and they wanted to be on the same page. They wanted to know what you're thinking, and then it was a two-way street. This is what like coach is saying, like, well, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm seeing, and okay, well, this it just makes it easier. Just you're not wondering what the coach wants out of you. You're not wondering, okay, well, he doesn't like me doing this. No, he's like the exact opposite. You're good at this. Keep that up, or we need you to do a little bit more here. Like that information, I think it stops a lot of overthinking in the hockey players, and I think that's huge because you lose a lot of power, you lose a lot of energy by just overthinking the game. And I think I did that for a number of my years early on. Like sometimes you would overthink so much. You're like, okay, screw it, I'm gonna go do something, not like watch movies. That's what I would do, is like, okay, I've beat that dead horse enough. Let's move on to something else. So um yeah, just to have a clearer picture instead of just wondering what's going on in the coach's mind, I think is huge for players. So that way they can take one less thing that's going on in their head, put it to the side, and then start focusing that energy somewhere else that can help
Yeah,
them.
I think yeah. And what I love about that, Patty, is the fact that I think it makes both sides accountable. Like, so,
Yeah.
because I'm sure you've lived in that too, but you don't really even know what the coach wants, and there's like there's these goalposts that aren't even really there. You think you've accomplished what he wants, and yet, I mean, he's not accountable to what he told you. But you get that you might not hear what you want to hear sometimes, by the way, of course, right?
Yeah.
But at least there's like a standard that both parties need to be accountable to. And if somebody's not, usually it falls on the player side. Like, that's on you. And if
Yeah.
the coach does, if you do accomplish what he wanted and you don't get the minutes maybe he promised, or the opportunity that would come with that, now there's another conversation that has to be had, right? So I
Yeah.
do like that on both sides, for sure. I think that's great. The overthinking part, like, wow, I love that you touched on that, because one of the things I do now is help players, with on the ice, trying to be their best. And what a lot of the time it is just that, like, almost trying to do too much, and you get frozen in not knowing what it is you're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
You talked about watching movies. Was there anything, like, so you did a couple things away from the game that would maybe help you get away from the game? Was there anything that you
Mhm.
did on the ice or pre-game that would help in your preparation, or things you figured out as you got older?
Yeah. So as I got older, I started to I wasn't always focusing on like, okay, I got to score tonight, or I gotta get an assist, or get a point, or I gotta do this. I started to break things out into details of the game. Okay, so when I do score, when I do have success, what does that look like for me? So Jay Woodcroft was the assistant coach at the time here, and we'd come up with like a list of either like four or five things, like five. Usually, if I had five shots, I had a good chance of scoring a goal that night. So that'd be my standard, was get five shots, like three hits. Usually, when I had got my body involved, I was more engaged and have better games. Like protecting the puck, face offs, try and be over 52% that game, or things like that. So just instead of taking the focus on the end result, you focus on the details that's going to allow you to get that end result. And that's kind of the thing I've been trying to pass on to younger players, and because it's a lot easier to get to 5 shots, to get those 3 hits. It seems more easier as opposed to I got to score tonight, and you don't know what that looks like. You just know you want to score, but now you break it into steps. Like, okay, and I tell my boys, like, play that first shift in your head before you play it. Like, puck's dropped, I bump into my winger. Loose puck's there, I bump it back to my D-man. I have to get open for him. You go through a whole shift and play it out as perfect scenario. Obviously it's not always going to happen, but you get that good feeling, you get that muscle memory, you see yourself visually doing it the right way. And I think that can help like kids out and help any player out.
Yeah. The thing I think it helps with a lot too, and I echo exactly what you're saying there when I'm working with players, is that it helps you understand what your identity is. And I don't want to say that in like in putting a player in a box or in a role specifically, but you mean a Patrick Marleau's different than a Chris Pronger, for instance, right? Like different than a Joe Thornton, right? So you guys play different ways, and you can both be very, very effective and impact the game, but not the same way, right? So and I think when you're, well, even me as a young pro, I think you're trying to still figuring it out, right? But definitely at the youth levels and the junior levels, like they need help figuring out, what are the details that make me special, that make me valuable to this team, and allow me to have an impact on the game. And when you can put those into 3 or 4 little units of metrics that they can focus on, bang! Now all of a sudden, those results that they all want usually start to happen, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then the one other thing I tell trying to tell these young players is, 2 things you can control is your attitude and your work ethic. Regardless of what the coach does, what your teammates do, you always have those 2 things that you're in control of, as opposed to things you have no control over, and you worry about those things. No, you focus on what you can control, and then build off of those things.
Yeah, I think that's the art of mastering the controllables, like, and it really is, because how much energy do we have like focusing on the things that we don't have control of, and we have we have influence over them. That's the thing I always tell players, right? Like, you do have influence over the coach and how much you maybe get played, right? Like your play will dictate that, your attitude, like your work ethic, these things that you're talking about that you do have control over will influence the coach. It doesn't guarantee the result that you want. But worrying about what that coach actually says or does or will do, that doesn't do you any good at all. So I love that advice as well. What you mentioned a little bit about visualization there. Was that something that you did like to use quite a bit in your preparation?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think I tried to do it as much as possible, and I think for me, I would almost do it without even without saying, okay, I'm going to go sit down for 5-10 minutes and visualize. It was always just kind of happening for me.
Yeah.
There was times where I was like, okay, I'm going to visualize, sit down, and I would do it. But looking back on it now, my brain was always kind of visualizing like what's going to happen the next day, the next game, or next practice even.
Yeah. I just had Dustin Wolf on, and he's a goaltender with the Flames, number 3 right now. A really great up and coming prospect, and goalies are obviously a little bit of a different breed. But we did talk about visualization, and he also talked about meditation. And sometimes, like, if people aren't familiar with either practice, they almost get molded into being the same thing. He spoke of meditation as being more of something that would keep him centered and in the moment, like in the present. That's how he would actively engage with his meditation. So that would help him then on the ice, right? That he could block out, the things that maybe he couldn't control, and then stay in the moment, stay in the game, help him get over mistakes and stuff like that. Did you ever mess with meditation at all in that aspect?
Yeah, I tried everything. I mean, I was always looking to get better. I was always trying to read things on the plane. I was looking into nutrition and all those things. So definitely tried the meditation thing. And I think that's where meditation is probably huge for controlling the controllables. Like you're thinking about your thoughts, right? You're like, thought comes in, is that beneficial to me, or should I scrap it, get rid of it? So being present and everything like that. And then the one thing I am telling my boys, if you're finding yourself in that downward spiral, like, oh, it's not going in for me, like you're repeating the negative over and over, I'm like, well, that energy you're using for the negative, what can you do with it? What, instead of keep giving it to the to the negative side of things. Let's take it and let's work it to a positive. So if you're worried about like, oh, I'm having trouble with that shot, and you keep playing that over in your head, like, okay, let's stop doing this. Let's go and do the shot. Let's go work on the shot,
Right.
Or so just different things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I call that closing, like the ability to be able to close the gap. One of the things when I'm working with players is that like the self-awareness. Like I think that's such a skill, like being self-aware and
Mhm.
being unbiased as we can with that self-awareness, right? So we can actually now make a new decision or a new choice in that scenario.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly to your point, a lot of times there's an event or a thing that happens, we tell ourselves a story about it, sometimes naturally, instinctively, and that story
Mhm.
oftentimes, if you hit the post in the breakaway, is, well, shit, that didn't work out very well and I'm an idiot, right? And like, so you run that program. The quicker you can catch yourself running that program, then the quicker you can actually change the program, right? Like, great
Yeah.
job of getting open, I read the D-man really well, my shot was 6, I got to skid a little tighter inside the post, boom, can't wait for my next shift, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's a way different way to process it, but it's the story that we're in control of, right? So
Yeah.
boy, that's a powerful one when we can get that one figured out.
Yeah, it is.
Easier
Yeah.
said than done, though, right?
It is. I mean, it can be a battle, but it's fun when you do overcome those little obstacles, like, and you finally realize, like, hey, it's not, I can control what I'm thinking about. I can control those things as well. But
Yeah.
being able to recognize the negative energy, or the wasteful energy, I call it. You're wasting it on something that's not going to help you. And to take that energy, okay, well, where can I use it, or should I use it right now, or should I just forget about playing that video over in my head and save that energy for next practice? Just get away from
Yeah.
it.
Just want to take a short break from my conversation with Patrick Marleau to do a client spotlight shout out. I think it's time. I don't do that enough actually on this program. Sometimes I read testimonials, but I don't talk about people who are being successful and who should be celebrated. And that person today is I'm going to talk about is Julian Facinelli. Julian Facinelli is it's actually a funny story how we started working together. He took my Peak Potential Hockey Project program, not this summer, but the summer of, what would that be, 2022, and he was on the East Coast. I knew that, and I knew that he was a 17-year-old, and anyways, wanted to work on his game and on his mental game, and thought it would be a benefit. And he had great success in the program, and he wanted to continue working together with me after the program was finished, which was fine. And so we had some further discussions about where he was going and what he was doing. And he said he didn't know where I was from, and I didn't really know, much about what he was doing or where he was going or what his dreams were and his goals. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to play in the BCHL this year." And I was like, "Oh, awesome! Like, what team?" And he's like, "The Vernon Vipers." And so for those of you who know me, you know that I'm from Vernon, and the Vernon Vipers are in my own backyard. So this kid from Toronto had been committed to by my home junior team and was coming out to spend the season in my backyard. So that worked out really cool, and I was able to work with Julian all last year, and he wanted to earn a D1 scholarship, which is definitely what most players do that come to Junior A, whether they're Canadian or American. They want to play NCAA D1 ideally, and hopefully get a scholarship. And so last year, as is the case with most rookie seasons, Julian, he got off to a good start, and things went well, but they didn't go great, but by his standards, and he had all the ups and downs that somebody living 3 time zones away and in a new province and in a new league, in a schedule that they haven't faced before, and navigating his way through. He had the ups and downs of a season like that, and didn't quite have the production that he wanted, and was hoping to get that commitment last year, and there were some people that were interested. It just never worked out, but all in all, he had a successful season, and this year rolls around and he's off to a great start, and Julian was awarded as recognized as one of the assistant captains for the team, and got off to a good start production wise, and is playing the brand of hockey that Julian can play. And lo and behold, the Princeton Tigers called, and this Ivy League school on the East Coast, and he had his fly down about a week ago, and he signed his commitment letter earlier this week. So it's so fun to be a part of that level of success. And then I say, whenever I work with anybody that's working with me, it's my job is to help you get what you want to get. My job is to help you have your goals and dreams come true, and for you to be the best player that you can be. And when you become a part of that process, and you get to see, a player go through the ups and downs of a junior season and of chasing down a scholarship, and then to see that happen at a school as prestigious as Princeton with my client, it is so absolutely rewarding. It is so fun. And it's worthy of celebration because, boy, it's hard. It's hard. There's a lot of hard times during the hockey season, especially in a junior hockey season. And there's a lot of emotional ups and downs. There's a lot of physical ups and downs. And when that phone call happens and you get to sign those papers and you get to realize that one little mini dream on his dream to bigger things now, but to realize that it's something to worth celebrate. So Julian, thank you. If you ever listen to the podcast, I actually don't know, but it's been an honor working with you and it's been an honor supporting you. And I'm I'm thankful for our relationship and for what you've been able to accomplish. It's been a fun ride. So a little shout out there for Julian Facinelli. Hope his season continues as strong as it has been, and definitely gets to wear that Princeton Tiger jersey sometime in the near future. So without further ado, and if anyone out there is interested, like I said, Julian didn't always, but he started with the Peak Potential Hockey Project. That's my signature mindset program. It's a great way to figure yourself out, to figure out what things you can do potentially differently or new that are going to help you be the best that can be on the ice from a performance level, and also how to maximize your development, your practice habits, all these great personal development things, and how to really actually learn how to be a professional hockey player. If you're interested in that program, you can find that at myhockey.com. And for anyone listening who would want to be a private client like Julian, like, you actually have to take that program first. That is a prerequisite of working with me. So just so you know, because we have to know what the strategies are and the tips and the tools before we can have the biggest impact as we can with working together one-on-one. So if you're interested, at myhockey.com. And other than that, let's get back to this conversation with Patrick Marleau. What a better person to ask, I guess. There's obviously tons of talk, and everyone knows that the NHL, most games ever played in the NHL. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
What a amazing feat. Also 900 consecutive games, over 900 consecutive games at one point. So there's a physical aspect to that, without doubt, and maybe you can touch on that. But there's also a massive mental aspect to that. To be able to be ready for every game, to be good enough, to be a value to your team that consistently, that you need to be in the lineup, and also to keep your body healthy. How did you?
Yeah.
You mentioned yourself as being creative and curious, about your game. How much time did you spend on that preparation aspect to keep all those things in line to do what you did?
Quite a bit. I think I always wanted to get into a routine. I think that's important for young players, like getting into a routine. This is what I do at this time, an hour before the game. This is what I do a half hour before the game. This is our meetings at this time, and to be able to. So I always kept it in mind, like, okay, I'm going to be doing this for how many exhibition games? Ultimate goal of 82 playoff game, regular season games, and then playoffs. So I always tailored I saw people do these huge long warm-ups, and that might be what works for them. But for me, I knew I needed to get a compact workout at a certain time at high tempo. And then I'd add a thing here or there. If you get banged up, obviously you're going to do something to help whatever you're injured with. But I knew I wasn't going to be the type of guy that does a 30-minute warm-up. No, I was quick, 5-10 minutes. I would squat. I heard Joe Sakic would squat before games or do some cleans or something like that. I'm like, hey, I'll give that a shot, So I'd go out and I give it a shot and do some plyo jumps after, squatting, whatever it was, 185, or just, something to wake the legs up and get them going. So, and then do a dynamic warm up and things like that. So it was, my warm up was probably, 5 to 10 minutes given on the day. And obviously, you got back-to-back games some days, so then you might shorten your warm-up, and there's a lot that goes into it. But
did you have anything part of that routine where you said you found yourself visualizing kind of all the time? Was there any department that you segmented off for just some type of a mental prep?
Yeah, I would just go out, going out into the stands and taping your stick, or going out to the bench, just kind of looking at the ice. That's whether that was 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I would try and do that as much as possible. And I think you still see people take the camera and they see them in the stands before games, and that maybe that's just their routine. They're just out there, but I think a lot of them are actually looking at the ice and going through their head like what they would like to see happen that night.
That was one of my favorite parts. I don't know if it was for you, but like I love the room. Like the room was great, and I mean, I don't know if they even play music in rooms anymore. Guys
Yeah.
probably have their earbuds in, but I mean, back in my day, there was definitely the tunes were bumping, and there's an energy to the room. But then you get out, into the stands or to tape your stick, and there's just that silence, and there's the cold, and there's like the ice that's clean, and I don't know. There was just like that moment, kind of the calm before the storm, that I always was just kind of attracted to be honest. Like I
Yeah.
like that aspect of the preparation.
I did too, and then there was a Bauer commercial. I think maybe even like when Lindros did it, and it still stuck with me. Is like it's a clean sheet of ice, and it's like I can't remember the headline or whatever. It's like it was almost to the effect like what's going to happen. Like it's you never know what's going to happen in a brand new game, brand new clean sheet of ice. Like that one always struck home with me. Like, what's the story going to be tonight, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a canvas, right?
Yeah, blank canvas. Yeah,
The blank canvas. I just wrote this down. We were talking about preparation, and you were talking about your warm up. And one thing that I heard, and maybe I didn't hear it, but I think I heard it someplace, that you were a big advocate of the cold tub, and that you
Oh, yeah.
did that between periods. Is that true?
Yeah. So I started later on in my career. I started getting into it, but I remember my very first. My first few years, I saw Tony Granato. He would get undressed and hop in the shower. I don't know if it was cold or hot at that time, but he was like the original guy where I saw him like, boy, I don't know if I'm going to be able to last that long in this league, seeing if I have to start doing that type of stuff, and here I am, like, I don't know how many years later, I'm doing even more, like just getting undressed, get in the shower, and then jump in the cold tub, cool down, and getting dressed again. So I always enjoyed doing that. And if I felt like I needed like a jump start, I would even jump in between the first intermission or even after
Right.
warmups. If I knew like, oh, this something doesn't feel right, I need to, little kick in the pants or jumpstart this body of mine to get going, I would jump in the cold tub. And the best part that I like when I would go in the second intermission and I go in the cold tub, while I was going out to the third, I felt like I was going out for the first period. Like my core body temperature would just drop right down. You just feel your body's, you're still, I mean, you got cold, you cooled down, but your muscles are still warm in a way. They don't cool down that quick, I don't think. And so I loved it. I love that feeling of like, it almost mentally, I think I kind of made it so I have an edge on somebody. Whoever's not doing this, I've got an edge on them. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And I think that there is a mental edge to doing that as well. Like just even with the idea of getting in there, and as comfortable as you can get with it, you're still uncomfortable, kind of, right?
Yeah.
So there's that aspect that's pretty cool too. Yeah, I'm a fan of cold tubs too, and cold exposure. I've kind of investigated all that stuff, and I was a guy that got undressed too, but I would stretch in the middle of the room all the time. I don't know why. I just was always stretching. I'd be completely no gear on, and guys, half the good time, guys would look at me like I was crazy, right? Because they hated putting their gear on, but I didn't mind getting undressed and getting dressed again. Did you, as far as stretching out, I don't, that's come to mind too. I saw some guys that played, I mean, without injury and very successfully for a long time, who were stiff as boards and like not flexible, no motion. At least I wouldn't think. I was quite flexible, and I was also pretty adverse to injury. So like I've seen both examples. Were you flexible, and did you think flexibility was something that was promoted your health there?
Originally, I wasn't flexible. I was one of the guys where just kind of sit around and like, okay, you guys ready? Let's go. Early on in my career, and I was like, okay, well, let's dive into this stretching thing a little bit more and learn more about it. And then, so I started doing that, and, body obviously felt better. You felt better the next day. Stretch for me personally, like stretching after games was one of the things I would do as well. And it's not like not putting in like hours of this stuff. It's quick and it's easy. And I mean, you do it, you're decompressing from the game as well. Like it's pretty easy to do, but I felt it very beneficial for my game. And, but at the start I wasn't very flexible. I was like, oh, these guys stretching this and that, like,
right. And when you say not flexible, is that like hamstrings you mean, or groins, or like what would you be referring to?
Probably hamstrings were probably my tightest, but now I can touch like but it's funny that like I always go like even the young kids now, like you think that they'd be flexible, but a lot of them they're still like 14, 15 years old. You still need to stretch. I think that's one of the things that not everybody loves stretching. It's one of those
Yeah,
comfort zone things. Like it doesn't
yeah,
feel the best when you're tight and you're stretching. It's one of those things you got to push through. But you feel
yeah.
better after. What's the result going to look like? And for me, jumping in a cold tub or stretching, I always felt better somehow.
Yeah, cool. What was the biggest thing? So in the 900 games and the consecutive, which is
Mhm.
bonkers to me, like that's just so crazy. And then the overall game total itself, there must have been something along the way. Like, do you remember one injury being like fairly significant, or the most significant thing that you played through during that stretch?
Yeah, I always kind of like played it off. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was starting to think, well, you had this injury this year. You had that like a nagging injury all year long, kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, but I would never come out and tell people like, it's one of those things. You just play through it. But looking back, there was one year where I had kind of like almost like a sports hernia that I played through. I had to put tape on it and things like that, and I mean, I probably could have had like a surgery of some sort, but I didn't want to have to do it. And it was timing too close to the season, this and that. But it was one of those things where it took maybe 2, 3 months for me, like, working with it and working through it to get it to where it was starting to feel better and starting to heal itself. So that was probably one of the tougher ones. I mean, I've had uh, uh, AC joint like separation, things that playing through those. Playoffs, there's always broken hands, things like
oh really?
that. But yeah,
Yeah,
but for me, it was I always wanted to make sure my legs were good, like groins and things like that. So I think that goes back to the stretching part of things too. That I always wanted to make sure that I was flexible there and
yeah.
strong at the same time.
Yeah, that's one thing I was thinking of. You're obviously known for your speed and your skating. One thing I remember playing against you when you came in at 16, that you could definitely skate the minute you got into the league. And uh, I, I kind of just tried to break that down. And there is no, like, you can't paint it with a wide brush. But I think like as far as like stride extension, your glide leg, like you need some type of like hip flexor, hip groin mobility to be a good skater. Like I think,
Yeah.
to be fast. And anyways, and again, now with my own boys, like you are, like, you're breaking down your own kids and, hey, where can we help? And I had a conversation with my oldest the other day. I'm like, God, like I don't, it wouldn't hurt you, man, to be more flexible. Like I tell you, especially in your groins, like and I mean, it's not like they're super active, but they're also sitting around a lot. I mean, go play
Yeah.
Fortnite doing a groin stretch. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's lots of ways to be engaged. But anyways, yeah. What would be? I just wrote a note at the top there. I mean, such a long career. I mean, the games played, passing Gordie Howe. It maybe seems obvious, but maybe it isn't. Like, what would you consider the biggest accomplishment of your career if you had to break it down into one?
Oh boy. Um,
Or maybe what's you're most proud of, I guess. I don't know. Like maybe it's the same thing, but like I think
it,
sometimes guys have like there's inner pride about some certain things that maybe aren't like instantly recognizable
yeah.
to the casual fan.
No, I always wanted to be on the ice no matter no matter what. I always want to be in the game. So I think that, probably take pride in that. Like I played through a lot. I wanted to be on the ice and I wanted to help the team. Um, I think as my career went on, I think the thing that I look forward to now is or looking to players is that compete. Like, do they hate to lose? Do they have that in them? And I think that's one of the things I look for now. But that's one of the things I think I took pride in is I hated losing and I didn't want to lose and I wanted to compete. I wanted you to beat me as opposed to me just letting you walk all over me kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wanted that competition. But
You weren't like that. I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's interesting the way that reveals itself or shows itself. You know what I mean? And you've kind of seen that. I mean, the casual fan has seen that in the game. You saw it as a player, like us growing up in the WHL in the early mid '90s. I mean, if you ever lost 5-0 at home, like there was multiple fights. You know what I mean? Like even if you weren't upset that you were losing, like you had to pretend that you were upset, right? I mean, like there had to
Yeah.
be some type of a statement that showed this isn't okay.
Yeah.
And now, like, there's a bit of a dinosaur in me, or maybe not. Like I still think the game's got to come back a little bit, but like, guys chatting and warm up, junior games, and they lose by 7 and there's not one buddy drops their gloves. It seems like there's less of that to me, like the actual
Yeah.
compete. I hate to lose and I'm going to show you that. Like, do you agree with that statement, or what do
Yeah,
you think?
like yeah, you were exactly right. When I first came in, and especially with like the coaches I had early on too, I was like, there's no way I'm talking in warm-ups to somebody on the other team. It was like that'll be thrown right back in your face, you know,
Yeah.
so quick. But yeah, I think, and that's the personalities in the game. I think there might be some people like, hey, I can be buddy buddy with this guy, and then as soon as the puck drop, okay, I'm gonna give him a shot or give him something.
Right.
I'm trying to soften him up so I could take advantage of him. There's that part of the game, but then there's also guys who are they're just having they're out there they're out there having a good time, and I don't know if the competitive nature's in them or not. It's
Yeah.
maybe it's just a different way. Maybe it's one of those personalities that's how they get the best out of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, each to their own, right? There is some guys that play a little better, a little more loose, like a little more with a smile on their face, and some guys that
Yeah,
play better with a burr up their ass, And I think
yeah,
there's probably seems to be more room for the guys that play with a smile on their face now, which is, I mean, kind of neither here nor there. What would that look
yeah.
like for you? Like, so Patrick Marleau being upset or being super competitive about winning, like how would that manifest and show up in your game?
For me, it would be, especially come playoff time. It was just that's the intent when the intensity ramped up and the hitting started happening and everybody's going at that high level. That's what I enjoyed the most, and being able when I got to that high level, it was just happening. So I'd be a lot more, obviously a lot more physical in playoffs. Just in like that engagement, and you're going for the ultimate goal. I think that's what I love. Everybody's game would get to a higher level, so then you'd have to raise your game too. It was perfect.
Yeah. That is the best. I mean, that's the best about hockey. And I wish it was a little more physical in the regular season. I get it. It's a
Yeah,
grind. It's 82, but like
yeah,
still playoff hockey now is still awesome to my mind.
yeah.
I mean, guys start
Hmm.
playing physical, kind of the way I think that the game's supposed to be played. And, it's all on the line. And I think, yeah, that's a ton of
Yeah,
fun.
and
That's the part that I miss too. I miss it, but I also don't miss it because it's a hard time of year.
yeah,
It's a hard time of year.
and it happens almost every year in playoffs. Is there's a guy nobody really thought of in a certain way, and it just the compete comes out, and it's like, we got a player here. Like,
Yeah.
where'd this come from? And then
Yeah.
and then as far as coaches, like, okay, how do we get that out of them more? Like,
Yeah.
it's funny, but yeah, I love watching the playoffs because there's always at least one or two guys on each team, and sometimes even like three or four on the winning team, where they up their game. They have that extra compete in them, and they're able to do that.
Any And then they get remembered too, FYI. So anyone,
Yeah.
young guys out there listening, like, I mean, that's remembered. If you can get it done in the big moments and that's where you shine, like people want
Hmm.
that, for sure.
Hmm.
But yeah, switching gears, biggest influence? I mean, I read in the brief little investigation I did going in, you were one of the youngest 18-year-olds or youngest to ever play, which maybe coincides well with the fact that you also played the most games. But um, influential years there, 18 years old in the NHL. Maybe that wasn't when the big influence came in. Maybe it was
Hmm.
somebody you met later. But can you remember anyone that was super influential, coach or player otherwise, that helped you out?
Yeah, I mean, my first year, I think the most of the team was all veteran guys. They were all like late late 20s or early 30s. Like, I mean, I lived with my first year. I lived with Kelly Rudy and his family. Mikey Vernon was the other goalie. Then, I mean, up front, Bernie Nichols, Tony Granado, Murray Craven. Mike Ricci came over. Owen Nolan. Vinny Danfus came over a little bit later. Adam Graves, like Doug Bodger, like all these, Todd Gill, like these were veteran guys, and I grew up watching
Yeah,
them play, and um, being able to have Marty McSorley, like having these guys there and having them as your mentors and teaching you and just watching them, for me, it was I loved watching people just because you can learn a lot from just watching how they handle themselves or what they do before practices. And I remember like take Vinny Damphus, for example. He would score that backhand goal like it was almost like a backhand one-timer up top, or you do a certain move on a D-man or do a stop and go all the time. And there's no coincidence that it would work for him because I saw him working at it every day in practice.
Right.
And that was one of the things my first agent told me, Don Baisley, and was probably one of the more influential people on for me for my game, my career. Was he goes, find your spot where it's going to be automatic for you to score, and before every practice, go and take shots from that spot. That was one of the very first things that he kind of gave me that little nugget, and I was like, because like that's your spot.
Yeah.
And so I would do that, and it worked really well for me. And I try and pass that on to the other guys, like, where's your spot? Like, find a spot, or your shot. What's your shot? Like, and perfect that. Keep working on that.
What a great, I mean, I do love that.
Yeah.
I work with some junior teams now, and it's funny, you go and you see the shoot around before practice or even after practice, and these guys put in a lot of work. But I made a comment last season, like they're all working on the one-timer off the half wall, like all of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how many guys take that shot in a game? Like, so few. Like, the one guy in the power play might get that shot one or twice a game, right? Yeah, you got 18 guys working on this shot, and I'm like, boys, like, no, like, I mean, I didn't say it the way you did, and I'm going to actually use it that way because find your spot. Like, where are you going to score in your game? Even getting back to what we talked about earlier about like the little metrics, right? Like, some guys are going to score in the paint. Like, go to the front of the net and find ways to get that puck under the bar, right? Or quick hand stuff. Anyways, it's if you want to be a pro about your game, I think, in that, back to that self-assessment point, like, you can really get a competitive advantage, I think, early, because most guys just show up and most guys just go home, right? And they do what's told them. And if you want to get a little bit of extra in there, I call it deliberate practice. It's not like my word for it, but I've heard it before and I like it. Like, you deliberately practice for you and about you within the confines and the ecosystem that's going on of your regular practice. My God, like, how much more benefit do you get out of it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the thing I tell my boys now too, that all the boys, like, some practices are going to be skill, some are going to be team. But I said, even in those team practices, there's things you can do within the drill to sharpen your skills to get better. And whether that's, first 3 hard strides on everything, every whistle, or whether that's shoulder checking, like, there's so many details in the game that that the kids, that you can give to them, but you just got to keep reminding them so it becomes second nature for them.
No, I love that. I love that. Yeah. Just want to take another short break from the conversation with Patrick Marleau to say thanks for all those who are listening and thanks for all those who have supported the show. Now, here's my call out to you. I know that half of you that listen on an Apple device, and I know that Apple is one of the only places that you can actually leave a review and some words if you so choose. It's super easy to do, but not many of you do it. So if you could right now, pause the podcast, go to your listening device, review the episode, place your 5 stars down there. You don't even have to say why, but you could if you wanted to, and submit. And that's all it is to it. So it really does take not more than 15, 20 seconds. If you're going to spend an hour listening to the podcast, you might as well take the 15 to 20 seconds to review it. It would mean the world to me. We do have 59 ratings right now, which is nuts. Like, there's over 60,000 downloads, I think, of this podcast now. So that would mean like 30,000 downloads on Apple devices and listens. And we have 59 ratings. So that doesn't really make sense from a math perspective. So that means there's a lot of you out there that haven't taken the 15 to 20 seconds to do it. So please do. Please take the time. Let's get this. Next time I do an episode, I want to see there be at least in the 60s. That a few of you have decided to give me a review. That'd be super appreciative. And again, it's more about the algorithms, and as Apple feels that more people are listening and that more people are taking the time to review it, they will put Up My Hockey in the feed of more hockey listeners, and hopefully spread the word out there that this is a good program and it's worth their time to listen. So If you do choose to spend your time on your drive or wherever you are listening to this, please listen to my request. I don't request very often, but you might as well throw a 5-star review in there and put a smile on your face and tell me that you appreciate the pod. So thank you. I do appreciate you reviewing or not. Thank you for being a part of the Up My Hockey journey and the Up My Hockey show. And let's get you back to this fantastic conversation with Patrick Marleau. Any regrets?
Well, yeah, you try not to live without regrets, but yeah, obviously not having hoisted the Stanley Cup is probably is up
Biggest one, eh?
there. Yeah, but I did give myself the most opportunities that I could to try and win it. So
Closest was when? What year was that? When you guys got to the final?
2016 against the Penguins, but
How many games did that one go?
6. But I've been to the Western Conference Finals, I think 5 or 6 times. Like we had some really good teams here, so it, just never got over that hump.
Deep runs.
Yeah.
Run. Yeah, that's
a lot of short
between,
summers.
Yeah, no kidding. I say that all the time. I mean, how that separation comes, like from the winners, right, and the losers, and like, I don't know, like maybe it's just me, but I think if you can get down to the final 4, final 2, and yes, there is another hump that you got to get through to be the ultimate winner, but like, my God, like how many lessons and like what does it take to even get there? I mean, and there's like puck luck and there's a bad call and there's all these things that can happen to you. And I think that you mean just going through that process and being to that spot time and time again, I think shows that that team and your group was a bunch of winners. Just didn't happen to go right.
Yeah, and then, I mean, and then there's sometimes where you probably your first round is probably against the best team you'll face all Stanley Cup, but then you expend so much energy beating that team that you're a little bit banged up or tired for the next one. Like there's so many different things that inches goes into it.
What any adversity that you remember? I mean, a lot of time there. Like, was there any substantial scenario that was like something that you look back on and like you're proud you got through?
I have lots of adversity. Probably when we were president. We had best overall through the regular season, and then we lost in the first round to Anaheim. And then so then I got stripped of the captaincy that year, and then following year I had my best year. Just kind of because in my mind, it's like that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I know you guys took it away. I'm still going to be the same player and lead the same way, whether I have that on me or not. Obviously, I didn't like the fact that it happened, but there's a lot of reasons that I was told that went into it. But
what was the coach? Who was the coach then?
It was Todd McClellan.
Todd McClellan.
Yeah.
So holy smoke! So I didn't know that. Can we dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. Oh no, was it Todd? I better make sure before Yeah.
Well, I think it
was.
It doesn't really matter to me who the coach was, but like so you guys have this great season. You got the C on your chest. Obviously, been there long enough to earn the C, and you had a successful year. And then you guys go out in the first round, and that like the results of that is they feel it's the best decision of the San Jose Sharks for Patrick Marleau not to be captain anymore.
Yeah, I was not. I don't want to get into it, but there's some things said behind closed doors that they had their reasoning behind it, and for me, it wasn't good reasoning, but it happened nonetheless.
Okay, well, so yeah, amazing. So we won't air the dirty laundry, but let's go at it from like the personal psychology perspective. So now you have this discussion. I mean, you're obviously now forward facing, kind of the face of the franchise in a lot of ways, and you got to go out there and play hockey. When I again talking with players now, like something called fear of other people's opinion. Like you could be totally thinking, what is everybody thinking? What are even my teammates thinking? Like, how did you go about cultivating that into your best personal season yet?
Yeah, it was a FU attitude. It was like, oh, screw you. Like, that's not going to, like, I know there's one or two ways that could have went, right? It could have been this way or this way. So I chose to go the other way.
So fuel.
Yeah. I use it as fuel.
And were you conscious about that choice?
Yeah, I think so. I was like, I wanted to prove whoever thought they should have taken it off me that they were wrong, and that that they had no effect if they were trying to do anything to, you know, to make me go this way, then that wasn't
Yeah.
going to happen. I don't know.
Did you allow yourself any time to kind of have the victim mentality and play the poor me card
No, I think I was pissed off right from the start.
right from the start?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. And
Yeah.
what a great, I mean, that's a testament, I think, to your character and everything else. You mean to not, to not run from that. I think a lot of players could have, and demanded a trade or whatever else could have happened. You decided to stay in there and stay in the fire. And it looks like, did you get an A? Did they give you an A that next year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know. And I think it was I think yeah, Rob Blake came in. So I mean it was pretty easy to see Rob Blake where the C, he's
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's been there, he's the ultimate, So I mean that part was easy, but the group of guys that we had in the locker room too, I mean that was huge too, because
Right.
we came together, we talked about it, and um
That's awesome. Well, it's not
yeah.
awesome, but I mean, I think that that's a really interesting story because, it is easy a lot of times for players to get lost in that, like the victim mentality. I mean, I've already said it, right? Like, oh, poor me, or why this, right? And
Mhm.
so back to me, what we talked about earlier, like the story you told yourself was not these guys don't appreciate me or don't like me and everything I've done for them, and what, it was more like, all right, I'm going to prove to you that this was wrong. And, like you told a different story that allowed you to be a better player.
Mhm.
So for everyone listening out there, it is the decision, right? There's those choices in those moments of how you want to use it. And you're never above any of that stuff, right? Like you never know when
Mhm.
it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
The
No.
game is so crazy that way, completely crazy. You just got to keep giving it to you, and it never has to give you anything back, does it?
Yeah.
um, what else did I have? I think well, I wrote lessons. I mean, you've definitely shared a ton of lessons, that you've shared with your boys over stuff that
Mhm.
you've done. Is there anything that stands out that you haven't talked about yet, as far as over this long career? Any lessons that stick out that you wish you would have known maybe at a younger age?
Um, yeah, I don't know how to word it. I think when you're in it, you're in it, and it's hard to get that perspective of like removing yourself and kind of looking at yourself in retrospect, or how things are going, or how things are looked upon from the outside. I think for me that probably would have been one of the things, like, okay, well, like let's really look at this. Like, is it is what I'm feeling what reality is? And that's kind of what we kind of talked about at the start, right? So
Yeah,
being able to keep yourself in the present and kind of recognize um, when you are going down a bad path, or not even realizing how you're on a good path, one of those
yeah.
things.
I think the creativity and the curiosity that you talked about early on in the game, I think that has to be a precursor to longevity. I mean, I think it
Yeah.
has to be. I mean, from what I heard about Zdeno Chara, like he was very curious about his game, about always trying to get better. And I think that intentionality about the process, like people say, like that the game's a process and that you've never
Yeah.
really arrived. And I think that, if you're constantly thinking that way, I think the game kind of just continues to be fun, I think, right? And it
Yeah.
continues to be something new and exciting to figure out. And if you go at it with that beginner's mind, even though you've got 17 seasons under your belt, right, that next season's
Hmm.
still kind of a fresh and interesting thing. Um,
Yeah.
so I,
Well,
is that something that you think that you felt maybe what fueled your longevity?
yeah, I think so. I think you always like, I mean, the opposite is where you're just complacent and you're happy with where you're at. So I was always trying to watch other players or read up on things, and steal things from certain players, and use it. And I think one thing Jumbo would always say is like, you got to prove yourself every game, like in every season. So that was for me. It was like, okay, well, sure, you did whatever you did last year, but what are you going to do next? Like, what are you going to do next?
Yeah,
What are you going to do next year?
yeah.
And that was kind of always, oh, my focus was always like, kind of what's next? What's next?
What's
Let's keep
next?
the
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome. Who's the best player you ever played with or against?
Oh boy. Uh, Probably with for the any like significant amount of time would be Jumbo. be the best player. This was coming up quite a bit, but best defenseman you play against, probably Scotty Niedermayer. I think he was just, I mean, wasn't overly physical. At times he could be physical, but it's almost worse that he would come and take the puck off you without being physical. You know what I mean?
Lidstrom-like, right?
Yeah, Barry Lidstrom-like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'll just come take that from you and leave you wondering how that happened or what's going on.
Yeah. The Gretzky Lemieux debate. You got a little bit of Gretzky, but not in his prime, and you also saw some Mario. Do you have a dog in that race?
Yeah, I grew up idolizing Mario Lemieux. Obviously, everybody idolized Gretzky as well. So it was, for me, it was the big. There's like three of them: Yzerman, Gretzky, and Mario. Those are the three that they always talked about growing up. But I really enjoyed watching Mario play and how big he was and how he can move on the ice. It was pretty crazy to
Did
see
you ever
him.
have him as a teammate in a world championship?
So World Cup, yeah, and keep telling the story. It was a simple drill. You come down, pass off the pad, like two guys coming down, just pass off the pads. And I went with him like 2 or 3 times in a row. And each time he shot the pass, he passed better, just as well off the pads as if it wasn't. It was pretty like amazing. And I shouldn't have been amazed because I remember growing up watching him, like he got a ton of assists by just throwing the puck on net and getting off the goalie's rebound pads. And I remember watching him like, geez, that's good. Like he just throws it there and he gets these assists and now playing with him, it's on purpose. He's throwing it. He's using the goalie as a bumper, as a passer.
Was that the World Cup where he let that puck go through his legs to Korea?
That was I think that was Olympics.
Oh,
when it went to Fleury. I think it went to Fleury. Yeah. Then
it was Korea. The one. It was definitely Korea.
Korea scored it, but did it go to Fleury first and then he passed it? I don't know. You're probably right. But yeah, he did let it go through his legs. I think that was at the Olympics.
And that was, you were there?
No, that was in Salt Lake. I was at the World Cup in Toronto and Montreal and Ottawa. I think
that was one of the most special plays of all time, I think.
Yeah.
I think that super natural vision, and I mean everything that was going on there, to not shoot that puck when you're like one of the best goal scorers of all time, to let it go through your legs.
Yeah. Well, to not shoot that, but to also have the wherewithal, like, okay, well, who's going to be the one picking it up, and are they going to see it too? Like that's pretty.
And in a spot where they're going to get it on their stick and be able to shoot it. Like there's so many things that are going on with that for sure. Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, the only thing I didn't ask you, that if you don't mind, if we have time, is just like that draft year. You talked about focusing on things you could control. I mean, it wasn't quite of a microscope as it is now for these players, but you mean going second overall that year, you had a great season in Seattle, 125 points. What was that year like for you, and being under the microscope and trying to obviously perform the best that you could during that time?
It was just sorry, a lot of fun. We got a lot of dogs here right now. Doorbell must have went off. It was just fun because I remember that being in the locker room, and I'm sure you probably had the same feeling in junior. Like I still have my buddies from junior, we're on a group text, but to be in a locker room and to be on the ice with guys that all had the same dream, all striving for the same thing, all pushing together, that was, I mean, something pretty special. And I think that we had a great bunch of guys in Seattle, and that was it made it for one of the best seasons. So much fun being out there with those guys. I think we went to the WHL finals, lost to Lethbridge, but we played hard for each other, and we wanted everybody to succeed and get to that next level.
Yeah. So you didn't get caught up in the Hockey News rankings and any of that stuff?
No, not really. I mean, obviously it was great to see that my name was up there and everything like that, but it was just I tried to block that out and just focus on the process, like we've been talking about. Just what do I got to do to keep myself there and keep myself getting better.
Right, because that was pre-cell phones, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, can you, like, now if you're to do it now, and maybe like let's say your son is in a similar spot, like would you be involved in the social media and have it on the phone, or would you have any direction with that? I think it's like such a different experience now for these guys.
Yeah, I think you're totally right too. I think and that's where I talk to him about energy. Like, are you gonna let somebody you don't even know or who he is have their comment going to hold any energy over you or any power over you? So you can only give people you can with negative comments. You can give them power. Or you can just not even acknowledge them. So I think if you
Yeah.
give them power, and then that's when we start those loops in our head and playing it over and over again. That's why I think these kids probably have to be a lot more mentally tough than what I was growing up, because we didn't have that social media. We didn't have somebody telling you how bad you did in one game or how great you
Right.
are in another game. So um, I
All these
think
critics, right?
all
Could
these
be,
critics, yeah, these
Actually, my wife and I just had a conversation about that. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but like I know that one of the hockey locker room superiority contests was like the jabs. Like we would always be japping each other, right? Like
mhm,
in I mean in good fun, sometimes not, right? But
yeah,
like 'cause I have three boys too, and I know you have a few kids, and like so
yeah,
they're at it too. And I say to Sarah, I was like, it teaches you like you have to be confident in that environment because you have to be able to take it, right? And
yeah,
so I find that in this day and age, everyone's so worried about what's being said to them. Like there's no accountability in the person that is being said to, right? Like to
yeah,
be able to somehow deal with it, or like,
yeah,
how are you going to get past this, right? It's always the bully's fault, right? And obviously we want to have that be diminished, but you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
you have to be strong enough to be able to handle it too, right?
Yeah, I think the saying where I grew up with "sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." I think that saying should come back,
Yeah,
and it should be plastered everywhere, because right now it seems like you said it, like words are more hurtful than somebody taking and hitting you with something. Like, oh,
yeah.
I can deal with that, but I think that what happens is people are giving whoever's saying those comments, you're giving them power as soon as you're like, oh,
Yeah.
you're hurt, you're letting them, they got power over you, and you can't let that happen.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good way to end. I think I really appreciate your time, Patty. Thanks for coming on. And again, congratulations on an absolutely fantastic career. And you represented Western Canada really well. And I'm proud to say that I was able to play against you in the dub there for a couple of seasons and see what you were able to accomplish at the NHL level. So thanks for all the lessons. Thanks for your time. And hopefully we'll have you on again sometime.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode of Patrick Marleau, episode 121. And if you are still around, I think I like to give a little summary of the shows and the thing that stuck out to me, uh, and which is the all the things that Patrick Marleau was able to do from a player perspective, even from a team perspective with San Jose, and even on the international stage, and the medals that he won, and all the things that he was able to do as a player. One of the intangibles, I'm always about trying to find the intangibles that sticks out, is the thing that Patrick was most proud of, one, and also what enabled him to play as long as he could. And I think they combined, and that is his competitive spirit, which is something that I absolutely am a firm believer in, uh, and finding ways to show that competitive spirit on the ice, not to just have it inside you, but to actually see it in real time, tangibly. One of the biggest things that players are always asking is, how do I get noticed? And that is one of the ways to get noticed, regardless of your hands or how hard you shoot the puck or how well you skate. Your competitive spirit can come shining through if you find ways in which you can show it within your game. So that is one of the big takeaways for me with Patrick, to say that that was one of the things that really drove him, and also was his curiosity about getting better and his like childlike approach to the game, about like, here he said it multiple times, always reading something. I like to watch guys in practice. I like to try new things. I was always investigating ways to get better. When you have that type of approach to anything, I might add, not just let alone hockey, uh, you are going to get greater value out of life. You are going to have more fun with whatever it is you're doing, and you are going to get better at what you're doing. And you are going to stay relevant for longer. Like there's so many benefits of curiosity and being creative. And to me, that's really a professional approach to whatever your craft is. Like the benefits are so numerous, they can't be overstated. So those things, if you can find that in your own self, in your own kind of DNA, and if you can develop that, what am I curious about? What am I interested in? What about my game can I get better? How can I improve? What's something that I can do today that I find interesting that I might be able to apply to my game? When you start asking those types of questions, good things happen. Good things happen. So celebrating your own creativity, being investigative about yourself, having the self-awareness to find ways to improve where other people aren't, and then that competitive spirit. I mean, that the compound effects of those two things can really, really drive you as a hockey player, and can really drive performance on the ice, and also drive performance as a human being, and in your community, and whatever you want to do or you are doing. So awesome life lessons there from Patrick. On the ice, off the ice, was always recognized as one of the great players in the game, and one of the great people of the game. And I think that came through loud and clear in the hour that we were able to spend with Patrick. So I feel grateful for this conversation. I hope you do too. I'm Jason Podolin. This is the My Hockey Podcast. And until next time, play hard and keep your head up.